Hello, I'm Dale Leftwich with RealAgriculture. Today I'm at the Ag Excellence Conference in Winnipeg, and I'm with Terry Betker with Backswath Management. How are you doing, Terry?
I'm doing really well. How about you? How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. This is really a very good conference. It's lots of fun to be here. I'm just here wanting to talk a little bit about how the economy is affecting farmers. We've been, just to give a little background, we've been in a period of historically low rates. This is quite unusual, I think.
Yes, yeah, it's been a long time since we talked to those infamous rates of 20% in the early 80s. So yeah, no, it's been really, I think the interest rates have been a benefit that a lot of farmers have capitalized on.
So farmers have gone out and bought things and really taken advantages and cut back on their costs?
Yeah, yes, and so there's been opportunities come along, and a lot of that was driven out of about 2007. So in the last 10 years, there has been some substantial profit margins in a lot of the sectors in agriculture, and a lot of optimism, which for a lot of farms has turned into growth, and some of that growth has been financed, and having low interest rates have helped with those decisions.
So it's been a very good period of time for the farmers taking advantage of it. Do you think that some farmers have been lulled into a false kind of sense of security with the fact that the interest rates have been unusually low?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because perhaps, but I wonder if it's almost a little more like the child we heard when we were children about cry wolf, because there's been a lot of talk for a number of years now about someday interest rates are going to cycle back up, and it hasn't happened. But now with the basic economy strengthening, interest rates are starting to creep up.
So yeah, they are talking. The Bank of Canada has given guidance that it actually intends to raise some interest rates. How do you think do you think the interest rates are going to be rising significantly?
Well, what I do know, and is actually just as a matter of chance, I talked to a vice president of one of the charter banks yesterday about interest rates, and they're forecasting within 2 years to get a prime of about 5.9%. So for a farm, that would then translate to anywhere from 6.5 to 6.9 or higher. So that's 4 or 5% higher than what it was at at the interest rate low.
So what kind of changes will that make then for farmers? Do you think that they're aware of what's happening?
Oh yes, yeah, I think they're aware, and a lot of the progressively managed farms have thought actively about how much of our debt we allow to run on floating rates, and how much we've locked in. So yeah, I think they're aware of that. There's two factors at play. It's just not the interest rates and the overall debt and the interest cost, but at the same time, we're seeing margins narrow up in general. And when the margins narrow up in general, then there's less ability of a farm to buffer increased interest costs.
Yeah, so it all kind of fits into the same story. There you can be pinched in from two sides, actually, not just one.
That's right. And any long-term sustained narrowing up of margins for farms that have been more aggressive, maybe with some of the debt they've taken on to finance growth, they're going to feel the hurt first.
So what kind of things can farmers do now as they're looking into the future in terms of being proactive as far as getting ready for this period of rising rates?
Well, other than thinking differently about how you finance growth, which would be watching the amount of debt you take on, the obvious would be to look at trying to access capital at its lowest cost. So negotiate with your lender about what your rates are, and there's some room, I think, to negotiate. The other, from an interest rate perspective, the other would be to lock in some rates, allow some to float. There's some of the lenders that I know of, some of their programs are pretty farmer friendly when it comes to the farmer's ability to stack or ladder payments and adjust terms so that you don't have a great big loan coming due. You have for example, if the farmer was going to borrow $2 million, so rather than just set one $2 million term, maybe lump it into 400,000 or 500,000 with different maturity dates, so you're not so susceptible to a rate when it matures. So there are some tactical things from an interest rate perspective that farmers can do. I think the other part would be to look at overall cost control. So as the margins narrow up, are there ways that we can manage our costs so we don't need so much financing? And the last, I'm rambling on here a little bit, but the last thing then, depending on the severity of the financial constraints on the farm, and we're talking cash flow here, would be to look at some kind of debt reorganization. So really, if the margins are down, and because the margins are down, part of that is the fact that there's increased interest cost, really the goal is to match the ability of the farm to generate cash to meet those debt obligations. And that can get offside pretty quick. So, the farmers that look out a little bit and look at where their financial performance is tracking and try to best they can match up their cash demands with what their ability to generate cash is. So they can do that internally, last comment here, or when it gets quite severe, then they can go to their lender and look at reorganizing their debt, restructuring.
So you just outlined like several things, and I mean the first thing that people think of is tie in your long-term rates, right? But you went in quite a bit further. That's just the first step, and then there are other steps that should be followed as well. It's a more complex thing. Who are the people that can provide that kind of information to farmers if they're seeking help? Like accountants are one people, but there's other people I think who are available.
Sure, accountants come to mind. There's still the ability to talk to some government resources. We don't have that. They don't have that luxury to the same degree as what it was 10, 15 years ago. And then there are management consultants. Well, there's any advisor that has some specialty or expertise in financial management would be someone that a farmer could talk to for another opinion. I think the one thing that farms would be wary of is if a farm finds that their cash flow is squeezed for any number of reasons, one of which would be interest rate increases, they want to guard against just doing a Band-Aid. If you're going to look at making change, make the change that's going to see you through for 2 or 3 years.
Okay, that's really good. I just want to thank Terry Betker for being with us today at the Ag Excellence Conference. Thanks a lot, Terry.
Oh, no, much appreciated. I love talking about this stuff. Thanks.